Hi, folks, and welcome to the 28th episode of the Vitor Vicente podcast. It's my pleasure today to chat to the journalist Rachel O'Donoghue. Rachel is originally from England, and she is now based in Israel, trying to report facts against the manipulation of the media. So, if you're interested in hearing her trajectory and the challenges of her profession, stay around. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Express your satisfaction with a thumbs up. And also, if you want to be notified of upcoming interviews, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you in a sec. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this conversation because I believe that the media is playing a huge role in the current climate. Maybe they were never that vital as they are these days, because there are different formats, there are various ways of reaching the audience. And I think you've been around for a good few years, not only in Israel, but also in England. So I think your insights will be of relevance for the audience. I'm very, very looking forward for that. I played an intro of yourself, but if you don't mind, just introduce, do some introduction about you to the people.
Sure. My name's Rachel O'Donoghue. I'm a senior editor at Honest Reporting, which is a media watchdog that monitors primarily American and UK media outlets for anti-Israel bias.
Okay, that's interesting. That's probably a new way of using the media. So we're going to explore that. So you are based in Tel Aviv. Before we start recording, we're just making me jealous, telling how good is the weather there. So I want to start with this question, and unfortunately, it's not as nice as talking about the weather. So every time I have someone from Israel, I always ask, "What's the mood in Israel these days?" Because it's already 8 months or 9 months. I'm very bad with maths after the 7th of October. So how is Israel healing, reacting? Can you give us, some insights about it?
I'm sure most people would agree, fatigued, I would say the mood is. As you say, this war has been going on for a long, long time. And, I think there is an appetite among most people to bring it to a close now and to get the hostages back. I think that's the most important thing for everyone. So I think it's tired. The mood is tired. Obviously, little victories, whether it's taking out key Hamas commanders, might galvanize people to an extent and remind them, why the IDF is in Gaza right now. But I think most people think the emphasis should be on hammering out some kind of deal to return the hostages.
Is that the view of Tel Aviv, or is that the view of Israel in general? Because I'm aware of the differences between the Tel Aviv mindset and the country itself.
Yes, I mean, it's difficult to say. Obviously, Israel is like any country, has a wealth of differing opinions, definitely about this. However, I think I speak for absolutely everyone in Israel in saying that the focus should be on the hostages. I mean, how their return is done might be something that's up for debate, but I don't think anyone would disagree with that assessment.
Yeah, and in terms of the relationship between the people and the government, I from time to time I see protests. I see family members getting into the Knesset, trying to talk directly to the people who have power and can make the decisions. How are the conversations happening, and how much noise is it taking place on the streets?
I mean, I'm not privy to those kinds of negotiations going on, and to an extent, I understand what's obviously motivating the families, and I would be doing everything in my power to get back a loved one. I can't really comment on that sort of thing. I've seen the protests in Tel Aviv. They're huge. They're constant. Whether they will, change the government's course is a different matter. But again, I try to stay out of commenting on too many quite political things in Israel.
Yeah.
I think that there's so many polarizing issues, and sometimes we actually have to cut through the noise of internal issues and focus on the bigger stuff, which is external. Israelis, I'm afraid, even when this war is over and whatever happens in the future, are always going to fight. That is probably the wonderful thing about Israelis, is their love of debate. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really in love with the way that Israelis debate. They are open to share different opinions. They separate that from personal relations. Like, they can disagree on certain topics, and it's all good. And I think we as Europeans should learn a lot from that, because they can detach from the debate and just move on and have a hummus or a beer. And I think here in Europe and in England or Ireland, we are not that good at that. We put a lot of personal emotions to what's happening, and Israelis and Jews in general, not only Israelis, are pretty good at this is a debate forum, and this is just our personal relations, and one thing won't affect the other. Is it something that you perceived?
Yes, I think that that's definitely true. I mean, I think Israelis probably have to be like that. They can't hate each other too much, and they're still brothers and sisters, because at the end of it all, there's, I think for Israel, there's always going to be a kind of existential threat bearing down in some form or another. So they have bigger fish to fry, I think, is what I would say about Israelis. Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah, if there's one country that needs to be united, is Israel. They cannot afford to split, because at any time a neighbor country can take advantage, and that can be pretty bad for the population. And I think Israelis are also very good of getting together when there is crisis, when there is real stuff happening, and then it doesn't matter. They are religious, non-religious, they are secular, or orthodox. Of course, there are always different opinions, but when it matters, they are on the same boat. And I think that's another lesson for us Europeans, I would say.
Absolutely.
So let me get to something more personal. We can set aside about the politics here. So you were in Tel Aviv, I presume, during this October 7th. Would you mind just tell us how was it for you? How did you get to know what was going on?
Gosh, it was, I mean, my personal experience of the day was, obviously, it was quite a hectic, frantic day. I was at my apartment, and we were actually awoken to it was actually my phone that went off with a rocket siren. I thought it must be some sort of test. And it was only when we heard them that I realized it wasn't. And obviously, as the news started, we were watching the TV, and as the news started coming through, it became increasingly apparent that it was unprecedented. I think, like many people, I chose to leave Tel Aviv, and I went to just a bit north to some friends near Netanya, just to get out of the constant rocket barrages, and it was kind of all hands on deck. I mean, obviously, my role as honest reporting, as you can imagine, the early media reports about what was going on were as you can imagine, it was, I think, most Western outlets were shocked and were reporting, as and what they could see, footage, whatever. But I knew then that I was in for a long, long, long slog, and that we would be in for, it would be a big war, and, it would, the media coverage would be against Israel, as it always has been.
Yeah.
So actually the first piece that I did for Honest Reporting was that evening, and it actually wasn't about the media's response. It was just, I think, commenting on the day's events. There was so much shock, and it was horrendous. So probably a day that I imagine most people in Israel will remember for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, of course. It's one of those things that you cannot erase from your memory. Like it's still hard to believe that that degree of violence happened in the 21st century, and the way it was reported in the media was appalling. Like, at the beginning, or maybe I was naive, I saw some solidarity, but very little, very, very little. Like I don't know why it was that small. Maybe people were just falling for the image or for the footage, that they couldn't be anti-Semitic for a day. But I think from the 8th of October, or maybe from the 9th of October, the world just turned the page. And it was mad, because it took, I'd say, 1-2 days to be with Israel, to be anti-Israel. And Israel was not even in Gaza responding. And the whole world was already saying, oh, Israel is going to wipe out Gaza, and they're going to do some revenge, and they don't care about proportion. So as a media person, how was it for you to start following the reaction to the October 7? How was it?
I mean, to be honest, I thought that the mainstream media's reaction to Israel's, strikes and then subsequently going into Gaza, it was expected. I had anticipated that response by the media, and it's something that has happened before, I think, and it didn't come as a surprise. Sorry about the irritating
it's fine.
dog barking outside.
I have my cat here. It's fine. He's silent, but that's okay.
But I mean, it was anticipated because it's obviously happened before, and the Hamas attack on October 7th was designed to provoke this kind of response in the media. Hamas deliberately, they took hostages because they wanted to ensure there would be a conflict that they could make last for a long time. They knew that Israel would not, agree to some sort of ceasefire without getting back hostages. And this is Hamas's game, plan. It always has been. It's a shame that the media is so willing to play ball and is so uncritical in that respect. But no, I wasn't surprised that at how the media is, and so many instances that we've had of, the Al-Ahli hospital explosion. I mean, I can list these huge lies that have just spun completely out of control. But as I said, it wasn't a shock, and I can't see it changing. I can't see it changing, sadly. I mean, we can keep fighting and combating it, but I think it's going to be something a bit more. The media is kind of, it's just one aspect of the anti-Israel tide that we're fighting.
So you think the media is dead as a good source of information when it comes to Israel? There's no way to revitalize or...
Definitely not all. Definitely not all. I think there are still some good journalists, particularly, even in, you know, outlets where we've seen them publish all kinds of nonsense, and actually they produce some good reports, investigations. Sometimes it is to do with journalists and, you know, not having editors at the top of their game, checking every single bit of copy that goes up. I mean, I know from being an editor myself that it's very hard, and, you know, journalists are churning out a lot of stuff. They're copying each other as well, which is how we see, you know, mistakes get repeated. You know, sometimes it doesn't come from a malicious place from a journalist. They, you know, they're not thinking, I'm going to misidentify Israel's capital as Tel Aviv and I'm going to do this. You know, they're just in a hurry and they've copied some stuff from a wire service, another news outlet. And so I think, you know, it's, you know, we're trying to tackle for sure those bad actors in the media who are determined to write things that are incorrect about Israel and skew the narrative. But also I think we're trying to up media standards. You know, journalists should be, you know, they should be fact checking when they read a story about a child in Gaza dying of malnutrition. They should look at these photos and go, you know, why is this kid's family all they don't look starving, and why is that, you know, just for them to probe things a bit more. I think journalists used to do that, and, you know, there are reasons why even today they can't. You know, time factors, the immediacy of online publishing. But yes, we would like to see, I think, just questioning what they get. If they receive a statement from Hamas saying 500 people have just died in an Israeli strike, you know, don't just print 500. You know, check that. It actually doesn't take long, and any good journalist should have 1,000,001 contacts absolutely everywhere, so that it can be crossed with 1 billion different people. They shouldn't even just be relying on one person, as they often are with Gaza. So that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the pace these days is very hard to cope for all of us, and journalists are having a very hard time. Now, but when I say that, I'm not excusing them for being lazy or being unprofessional, because that's the nature of their job. It's a fast-paced environment, and they need to be able to follow things the way they are rolling. So I don't care. That's their job. They need to do it to the best of their ability. So I don't think that's a valid excuse. And maybe some of them are really not capable, but sometimes I tend to believe that there are institutions behind who are telling them what they can say and the way they can say, and not to be very much concerned whether things are real or not. Sometimes it's better just to come up with some news that will raise attention instead of doing investigation. Do you think there are also some people behind the scenes controlling the articles and the videos and all that?
I mean, you know, yes and no. I mean, obviously everything that comes out of Gaza is, you know, at present is coming from embedded journalists. I mean, Honest Reporting's work that we did, you know, post October 7th, was that we revealed a lot of these journalists who were documenting the Hamas atrocities. They were people who would, you know, they went in with Hamas. They were not there as, you know, journalists. They were taking part. I mean, one of them, we have a video, he's armed with a grenade. I mean, what part of your journalistic equipment is a grenade? You know, and you have mainstream outlets, you know, that, I mean, I can list them, who were paying these individuals money. So I mean, it's part of the problem starts there. It's with, you know, news organizations paying people who cannot be trusted as news gatherers, and they would. So I mean, I'll go on to the other point, but I mean, you know, their argument to us is, well, you know, in an enclave like the Gaza Strip, in which you know, Hamas runs civil society, it is the Gaza Strip. Hamas is very much it's impossible to find people who are not in some way linked to Hamas because of how of its role over there. And to that we say, well, that's again that it's just not true. There are plenty of people in Gaza who didn't go to the Strip armed with a grenade. There are plenty of people who, are not do not have pictures of themselves being kissed by Yahya Sinwar on the cheek, as one photojournalist that we exposed had. So it starts with that. It starts with the media, actually not ensuring, what they're receiving from those on the inside is credible, can be trusted, and is fit to print. And then when it comes into newsrooms, I think it's you're right. There probably are editors who, they might change certain words here and there because they are trying to, they're not fans of Israel, or they're trying to promote a more pro-Palestinian narrative. But generally, the journalists and editors, most of them, and by and large, I'm not going to name names. There are some who aren't, but most of them are pretty receptive when you get in touch. And if it's an error, they will make that mistake. Of course, there are publications who, are, I would say, like chronically anti-Israel. They're always, and they will dig their heels whether it's a mistake, and you'll have to threaten to go to, in the UK, the Press Complaints Commission. You really have to fight them. But most of them, I know so many journalists who I know are good people who are really trying to do a good job, who don't hate Israel, who want to report well. It's a shame that, those huge errors, and when they've happened, overshadow some of those other good people in the industry. And in general, it's not just Israel. There's a crisis in the media industry in general with a lack of trust, and I'm not sure if that's these individual journalists on the ground. It's some bad individuals. I wouldn't give a proportion to how many, but there are enough.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And what you just said, it's very scary, because if we cannot trust the journalists, then we are in big trouble, because that's one skill that they have to have is being trustworthy. They might be not hardworking, they might be moody, they might be XYZ, but they need to be trustworthy, because that's the nature of the job. If you choose to be a journalist, you need to stick to facts. It's that simple. Otherwise, pick some other industry. But it seems to me that journalism is not much about facts these days, or investigation, because I'm old enough to remember journalists revealing scandals of the elite, and the way I see it these days is they are working on the side of the elite, or of some agenda, and unfortunately, Israel is not part of that agenda. It's actually seen as an enemy. So it makes Israel position quite tricky. So I don't know how much hate there is among journalists, or it's just part of the profession. And actually, I'll be interested in asking you, as a British person in Israel, and not being an Israeli yourself, why do you think, like, people in general, not only journalists, they hate Israel? Why do you think? I know it's a $1 million question. Why there is anti-Semitism? And there was always anti-Semitism, and it seems there's no way to set it aside.
Gosh, you're right. It's a very complicated answer, I would imagine. I think that anti-Semitism has always existed. It always will. It comes and takes different guises throughout the ages. I think that today, anti-Semitism never really died. I think that was the thing. People are kind of, for example, if we take the United States, and in Europe, we traditionally we think of anti-Semites as, jackboot wearing Nazis. And of course they still exist. And in America, we are seeing kind of resurging extreme right that many were very active online and have some certainly very popular podcasters. We've commented on one or two of them. And then there has been, the anti-Semitism that's always existed in the Islamic world. Obviously, it's no, I'm not saying anything groundbreaking by saying that. It goes back way before Israel's existence. The idea that the hatred towards Israel is based on the occupation is absolutely absurd, considering I can list the massacres of Jews that predate Israel's founding. So really, it doesn't have anything to do with the modern state of Israel. And in the Islamic world, as we know, in Muslim majority countries, that not just Jews, but Christians and other religions have lived as second-class citizens when they've lived there. And I think the reason, we're seeing this, I think, it feels like this tide of hatred toward Israel and Jews is because I think it's really just coming to a head that this right wing in the United States, it's funny that they're kind of aligned with the Islamists in the Arab world, and it's just created this perfect alliance, it would seem. Some of the individuals that I see agreeing with each other on the social media platform X would shock you. I mean, neo-Nazis and like I said, the Islamists, holding hands. And I think that's what it is. It's just kind of come out into the open now because I think it's been given a green light because, the Israel-Hamas war has happened. It feels like that now, but I just don't think that it was just under the surface, always there. I don't think anything has really particularly changed, just that people have become a bit more vocal.
So on your self-introduction, you mentioned that one of the roles of honest reporting is to go after the news in Britain and in US. So can you expand on that, on what you do and what are the targets? What have you achieved so far? Is there anything on the horizon that you want to do? That would be interesting.
Yes. So, I mean, part of my job is really just reading news about Israel in America and the United States. I check for inaccuracies that I can spot, and I will make contact with the journalist or the editor, ensure a correction is made. And also it's to do with looking into the backgrounds of journalists, things like that. So Honest Reporting has had a lot of success with exposing the pretty horrendous histories of, I mean, more than a dozen journalists in the past year or two who have been subsequently fired from their jobs. I mean, these are from places like Reuters, the New York Times, CNN, large play, and this is just, doing a bit of research, a bit of due diligence, probably what these media outlets should do before hiring these people, and checking that they haven't praised Adolf Hitler on their Facebook page, for example. I mean, it seems, I think people are always, they're a bit surprised sometimes when we've had these stories. We've gone, this woman who's hired by the BBC, this was a couple of years ago, who'd praised Hitler. I had another who'd won a very prestigious award from the Reuters Foundation, who again had praised Hitler and the Nazis and called for a Holocaust of Israelis. And I think, everyone is surprised or shocked. And I think,
and this person was fired?
Yes, I mean, their award was rescinded and a number of other things. an apology, and it's important because, you know, yes, you know, these are just, say we're talking about a dozen individuals, and there's so many others, you know, or whatever out there, but you know, I think of the impact that just one of these people could have had. This is someone who you know, is a fan of, you know, the architect of the Holocaust, and I think this person who would be filing stories for major media outlets, and if those are they would be reporting on Israel, and I think how much damage just one individual can do if their work isn't properly vetted by an editor. And as I said earlier, I know, you know, editors are rushed, stuff gets through. These are people who would seek to cause harm, and they do it by gaining employment in positions where they can do it, and that is in the media.
Yeah, and it seems that you do a great job of pointing out those individuals, and you are doing them a favor. Not them as individuals, but as organizations, where at least they can, you know, they can get rid of some Nazis from their workforce. And I don't think it's anyone's objective these days to have someone who praised Adolf Hitler, you know, among their staff. I would say, but I would like to think. Yeah. So the other thing you do that I notice on social media is like very short videos, like telling how the media is lying, also denouncing some situations that are being reported wrongly. And I think it's interesting because, you know, back in the days, most of the media was based in articles, interviews, but there are new formats these days, and we've been around for a few years. Maybe we have seen the transition. So, in terms of communication, how much it's how much trend is now to communicate via you know, videos of 30 seconds versus articles, and you do a bit of both. How do you decide what's the right format, let's say?
I mean, we're trying to really reach everyone across all platforms. I think sometimes with critiquing articles, it's best done in a piece of writing that then can be sent out to our subscribers, and it's also to add some of the successes that we've had, to advertise those sorts of things. That's important. I mean, in recent years, you're right, the short form video format has taken over the internet, and I do those, and we try to put those out because, you know, it's one thing is for us to call out the media and tell people that they're getting it wrong, and then they're doing this. But, you know, I mean, in fact, to illustrate this point, one of my favorite videos of this entire conflict was, I don't know who the guy is, but he'd gone to a march in London, a pro-Palestinian march, and they were chanting, you know, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And he'd gone up to a number of these young people, you know, 19, 20, in their sort of kafirs, you know, holding their signs. And he just said, so which river and which sea? And none of them could name which river, and none could name which sea. And it just became abundantly clear that, you know, they all hate Israel because they think Israel is an apartheid state, or it's doing genocide because they've listened to these buzzwords that have been thrown out. And I thought, you know, they actually, I think if you gave them a map, most of these, they couldn't even point out Israel. So I thought, okay, and the team, you know, our amazing social media team, you know, we thought, okay, we need to reach young people, and it's not just saying the media are wrong. We need to tell them why we're right. And the way to get to young people is probably through short form videos, which break down things into really easy facts that maybe they'll watch. And they have, you know, these videos have really done incredibly well. They're being shared a lot, and it's great to see, because that means that it's a different audience from the one that we had traditionally engaged solely, you know, kind of 10 years ago, 5 years ago. and that's good, because I hope that these are the kinds of videos that, where there are young college students in the United States who might have watched them, or who might be kind of pro-Israel. I don't even just mean Jewish students. I mean, I think there are a lot who kind of think, God, do I agree with this crowd, this pro-Palestinian bunch who are screaming on the college green?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll watch these videos and go, okay, this is what I can say when people are saying this to me, and to give them the facts that they can spread. So that's the idea behind those, and of course all the other X, Twitter, we're obviously very active on. So yeah, trying to reach as many people as possible, especially those who wouldn't traditionally be interested in Israel or support Israel.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to say. I mean, that's the target, because if we talk to those who already understood that the media is their enemy and is telling things that are not true at all, then I mean, we can talk to them and reassure them, but I think there's a lot of work to be done on people who are a bit confused. There are some that I wouldn't have any hope, but there are like a good few who don't know exactly what to think at this point. Like some people listen so many sources, and they cannot make conclusions. And maybe if someone come up with a basis, with being on the field like yourself, that you are in Israel, you're not just reporting what's going on in Gaza from Cambridge. It's very different. No, you are there. So I think that plays a huge role. And back in the days, like journalists used to go to the field. They still go, but not as often as before. I tend to see some people sitting on couches and preaching about what should be decided for society, and that's so appalling. And but it seems to be a trend that people think that a laptop is enough to understand the whole civilization. It's much more complex than that. So what did you make out of living in Israel? And if you can tell us, for how long are you based there?
So I moved to Israel in 2020. It was kind of during coronavirus, and then I was sort of going back and forth for a while due to border closures, really, in the UK and in Israel. I'm sure you remember those incredible lockdowns, no travel, wild times. And then I kind of permanently settled here, I think, in a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago.
And what did you make out of from living there? How much your image changed? Have you visited before, just to understand the before and after?
Yes, I mean, I was, I knew Israel, and I'd visited before, and I love the place. Great country. And as I said, it's, for a country that's, or seemingly there's always a kind of conflict or conflagration, something going on. Even in the short time I've been out here, I was thinking back, there was the May 2021 Hamas conflict, which was, I don't know, 12 days. There was then the next year, which was Islamic Jihad for a few days, like over a weekend. Then sort of October 7th the next year. And I thought, for a country there's always something, it's a surprisingly happy place. It's there's always a good feeling in the air, and I think that's what I like about it. So I mean, if I have to always think, if Israel is like this when they're at war and battling enemies, firing rockets constantly, I can't imagine what it would be like as a country in a state of constant peace. It would just be even better. So I'm working towards that end.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what what is in common between Britain and Israel. And one thing that crossed my mind is that Israel changed government very often in a few years. I know England didn't, but you guys changed prime minister also very often. No,
Yes.
not the government, but the prime minister. There was a time that had, like, I don't know, 3 in the same year or 3 in 2 years, something like that.
I remember that. I don't know how similar Israelis and probably maybe in terms of politics, I think being frustrated. But I think the similarities are few and far between, to be honest.
Maybe the sense of humor, but that's something I
think possibly the sense of humor. You're right. Yes, the sense of humor. Yeah, they definitely can laugh at each other's jokes. I'm understood here, so that's good.
Yeah, that's an excellent sign. That's one thing that every time I was in Israel, I could speak my mind. I could take the piece from people, and they could take the piece from me, and there was no issue. It was just for the fun, just for the sake of having a good time, and that's not something that you can explore in many parts of the world. Some people are more black and white, and I think in places like Israel or UK and Ireland, I'm based in Ireland. That's why I keep referring to Ireland here. I see that, and I find it very, very healthy. Not to talk about Ireland, just one personal thing. Your surname is Irish.
Yes, it is. I'm not Irish though. It's on my father's side is why. I think maybe my great grandfather might have been Irish.
Great grandfather, yeah.
But was it great grandfather, I think, was Irish.
Have you visited Ireland or not yet?
No, I have never ever visited Ireland, I'm afraid. I would like to go though. I hear that it's beautiful.
It is, and unfortunately, the political situation is pretty awful. As you know, the government recognized the state of Palestine, even though they don't know the borders and what kind of government will look after the people. But it's just a trend. So they just go that direction because they believe it's translated into votes, and they are just politicians in the most ugly sense of the word. That's what they are. And the same happened in Spain, same happened, I think, in Norway, and maybe a few other countries are going to follow the trend because it look good at the eyes of the public. Now, with people, it's a bit different. Like if you ask the average Joe here, they don't care. They just don't care. They actually, some of them would like to go and enjoy the seaside, and they just don't care. There's a big division between the people and the government, so I don't find the people anti-Semitic. Of course, there is the odd person who hates Jews, but they hate everyone in general. So
I mean, of course, I always say this to people. I think the majority of people do not care about Israel and the war at all. And the thing is, you would think that some of these conspiracists online who spread the craziest stuff about Israel would realize that actually many governments are using Israel Hamas as a distraction. It serves them to distract from the stuff that's going on with themselves and to get people riled up about an external issue the mind boggles when I consider that people aren't just thinking, should we not be caring about the fact that we can't afford groceries and gas and if they're concerned about immigration, with the fact they can't afford a house, jobs, and instead they're waving Palestinian flags. It's quite something.
Yeah, the other day, Rachel, I couldn't believe. I think I thought I saw it all, but this was beyond my imagination, and my imagination is quite fertile. Actually, I published 12 books, so no, I cannot be part with imagination. So the other day I was watching or checking house ads because I wasn't. I'm interested in doing some investment. So I was just scrolling, and all of a sudden, I saw a couple of Palestinian flags in a house ad. And some people might think, oh, it was an accident. It wasn't. It was like 2 out of 7 photos have the Palestinian flag, and maybe they thought that would help selling it, which is, it's nonsense. Like most people are interested in if the walls are okay, if the neighborhood is it's safe, if the place is pretty and it's suitable for their needs. Like why do you care if there was a Palestinian flag before? Even myself as Zionist, I wouldn't buy a place if there was an Israeli flag before. No, it's not about that, but it looks good, and maybe you can show that to others. So that's it's just something that I think is a weapon for people to promote themselves on the web more than anything else. They don't even know that there is a West Bank and Gaza Strip, as you said. Like if you show them a map, they don't know what to do with that. They will just, I don't know, they'll just roll a cigarette with a map. That's all they will do. So,
well, I mean, of course, there's an irony. I was reading the other day, traditional Palestinian kafirs. They date back actually to a British soldier, I think, during the Ottoman Empire, who had designed these, and the Jordanians and the Palestinians, whatever it was. I can't quite remember the story, but anyway, the traditional Palestinian kafir had been made in a traditional way at a number of small places owned by Palestinians in the West Bank. And, I was reading the other day that they've all but closed down. In fact, I think they're non-existent. They used to be a thriving business, all having been taken over by, and especially more recently, sales that are out of control by Chinese manufacturers, who are obviously manufacturing these kafirs for a portion of the price, and so that these college students are then buying them. And and it's exemplified in that these college students who run out onto the streets and are marching for Palestinians, while buying kafirs from Temu or Alibaba or whatever it is, in doing so directly harming the hardworking Palestinian civilians that they claim to care so much about. It's it's sad. It's sad, and and strangely, I mean, this is taking it, I suppose, a bit further. I think with these college students, it's not really even about Israel. It's not really about Palestine or the Palestinians. It's about them being quite a lost, sad generation of students who don't really have a lot to care about, and they're kind of rudderless and directionless. And where you don't really see that among young people in Israel, because there is a real sense of community. When Israelis go to the IDF, they spend 3 years, 2-3 years, with each other. It's about fighting for your country. It's about loving where you're from. It's being proud. And there are very few college students in the United States that think like that. And that's a failure, not of them, but of their parents, of successive governments that have gone. We can't blame them for marching for Palestine when they've not been shown what they should care about.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the view I take.
Yeah.
And I think it can be changed. I think maybe we're starting to see, enough people waking up and to this rot that's taking place. And who knows? Maybe the future will be different.
Yeah. In terms of Britain, so you guys just changed government. Do you think there is any signs of hope when it comes to the relationship between Israel and England, or to stay the same, or will be even worse? Or what will be your forecast?
I think that Keir Starmer is going to have to kind of blot out, or whatever you call it, a lot of the noise that he's going to get from some of the more radical voices in his party. We saw that Labour was damaged in the election, losing to a couple of independent candidates who ran on pro-Palestinian platforms. So I think that Keir Starmer, the thing is, I think that Keir Starmer is not an idiot. You know, I hope that he's not. So I can't see anything radical really changing. I think if he has it his way, and I'm sure he's going to, you know, and I again, you know, even with people like David Lammy, who was in Israel the other day, you know, he wasn't saying incredibly controversial things. Yes, there might be a recognition of the Palestinian state, but I mean, let's face it, even the recognition by Spain and Norway or whatever was really just a publicity stunt, and it means absolutely nothing. It's nothing on paper. It's not a real agreement. It's not recognized by anyone else. The UK might do this. It might appease some of its voters.
It's almost like a tweet, isn't it?
Yes, it's just but no, I can't see Keir Starmer really making a huge shift. I can't see them halting arms exports to Israel or whatever else certain MPs in his party are calling for.
How was your experience working in the British press, and how would you compare it to your current environment in Israel?
Very different. I mean, where I work now, I suppose I wouldn't really call it the media. We are, but we're kind of looking at the media more. So before, I mean, I worked in really mainstream newspapers, so tabloids, as a news editor and editor. I think this is probably why I have a bit of sympathy for journalists, because I do know what a uniquely challenging environment it can be, having to meet these deadlines that are, you know, we're not just talking about an hour deadline, we're talking about, you know, in some cases 30 seconds to get the correct headline that's going to get that Google traffic that you really need. And if you miss it, you know, that's another website that's going to get all of the hits, and you have targets at most big newspapers. So if we really want to affect change, I think rather than demonizing individual journalists, it's really about, you know, putting pressure. I like I said, I try to communicate with the editors and to see changes made like that. And also hopefully, you know, educating the public more, you know, and they can see, and they'll be a bit more critical when they're reading the media. And really, the media won't be able to get away with putting in, whether it's bias, outright lies, because they'll have a more critical readership that's like, hold on, should I be trusting this? And actually, people are doing that more and more these days. We know that trust in the media is at an all-time low. So I hope that people are reading with a critical lens anyway, especially as it pertains to Israel.
Yeah, and I would say it's a tricky job of yours as an editor, and I can relate to that because as I said, I'm a writer myself, and I had a publisher 10 years ago, and it's very hard to give feedback to people, especially when they have a lot of feelings and passion to the things they produce. And I think journalists and writers are very sensitive. So if you tell them, oh, this word, it's not okay, or you have to rewrite a couple of paragraphs, because when they finish to write, and I understand, I'm a writer myself, that thing is very warm, and and so sometimes you think is the best piece ever, because I don't know, you were so enthusiastic about it that you cannot see it with neutrality. And that's where the editor comes in and said, look, if you send it as is, maybe there'll be a couple of people who'll be interested in, but that's it. In 1 week, it's dead. Or people, or other feedback that is very tricky is people won't understand because it's not clear. So how would you approach a journalist to make sure that the piece is improved and there is collaboration between yourself and the individual?
I mean, I reach out to journalists on a one-to-one basis a lot. just finding their email address online. In a lot of cases, they've messaged back and gone, "Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, or I didn't know," and they've made the amendment. With certain places, it will be about engaging with the editor, and sometimes here it really is a case of knowing, of me knowing my stuff. So I mean, a lot of editors will argue the toss. I know that I used to do this. If I received a complaint, I would not want to make an amendment to that story. Editors loathe to do that. There's a reason for that. It doesn't look good to have lots of amendments and clarifications on your website. So I think, engaging with editors, and I think knowing your stuff and being persuasive. I think putting it in a way that, you're not, I try not to be aggressive or shaming them or whatever. And, just being pleasant and saying, look, it's actually these are these sources. These are why these sources are correct. And the people that you've linked to are not, it's not going to really affect the story if you just, sometimes it will, but if you would just make this change, and I think you get more with that approach.
Yeah. I would agree 100%. I think there's no better approach than reaching out to the person and telling that we are a team, that we are there for the same purpose. We probably wear the same jersey, even though it doesn't seem at the beginning. And there's a common purpose of improving the article or the video, or whatever is the content. We are there together, with the objective of sending the message properly, that people will be able to perceive it and understand what is it about. It's about, I think it's very much about transmitting a message, and it's very tricky because it's not only the person it's not only the sender, but also the recipient. You also need to be very mindful of the audience. How would you try to anticipate the audience when you look at the content?
As in who we're trying to reach, or
Yes,
who we're trying to engage.
Yeah.
I think it really depends. It depends on what we're working with. Obviously, if we have a real bombshell clip, from the BBC, someone who said something, and you'd be surprised at how often this happens, that when people are talking unscripted, some of the things that slip out, then we're going to try and get engage younger people, something where we can have something snappy that is visual that they can look at. Obviously, if it's something dry that is still super damaging misinformation, an example of that was the Lancet medical journal the other week that published a correspondence that kind of claimed more than 180,000 civilians people might have died in Gaza. This is a short little thing that appeared in the Lancet. It's dry. It's, most people are not going to read it. It was that one little line that they had slipped in. And for that, we have to find ways of making it more exciting. So for that, we do try to do video, but the challenge, I think, is that we find is trying to get, like I said, to make it more appealing to those who don't just want to read an article. So we work with a lot of different mediums. Instagram is a great one for experimenting with both graphics and things like that. Stuff that's very shareable and can be read in a second. Even single sentence things get shared so well, because people just don't have the time, or they're too lazy. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I think when people are commuting, that kind of content is perfect, because you don't want to read, let's say, a 2 pages article, because maybe all you have is 7 minutes. between one stop and the other, and sometimes you are just standing, let's say, in the tube or in the tram. Talking of a beer, and just to close that, we are getting to 1 hour. What would be your word of encouragement for people to visit Israel if they haven't?
If they haven't visited Israel, why should they go? I mean, if you like Jewish people, you'll like Israel. Great food, great weather, great beaches, lots to do. I mean, it's like it's perfect. And then if you hate Israel, you should also visit, because you again, there are Palestinians here. You get to meet them firsthand. You can go to the West Bank if you want. There's plenty of stuff to do. You could even go to probably near to the border of Gaza. So it's really for everyone. Hate Israel, love Israel. Everyone's welcome. Come along.
I think that's a great marketing. I think you can pursue parallel career in sales for tourism, because I think you reach out to all the audience, not only those who love to have a good time, but those who hate Israel and wants to go there and see it by themselves. There's nothing better than first-hand experience, as you know, as an expat. It change your mind, change your perspective, and after a while, you are almost a different person, and that is great. Is there anything you miss from England? Just to close, I always ask expats this.
Is there anything I miss?
Not the weather, I would say.
Ooh, I miss the beer. Yes, I think the beer in the UK is better than Israeli beer. I'm sorry. The beer here is good. It's just not quite. So I miss that.
I agree. And the other thing that I would say, and that's the thing I don't like about Israel, sorry, all the Zionists here, but I always say this on the podcast, the beer is very expensive, and I hate that. It's very expensive. Yeah.
Well, I think everything is kind of expensive here.
How much to pay for a pint these days? Like the average?
A pint in a place in Tel Aviv, I mean, 38 shekels. So what's that?
So
it's like about £8 or something. Yeah,
it's quite a lot. And
it's expensive.
About the Irish prices. I pay between €6 and €7, so that's like what, £5 maybe, £5.50. So
yeah, that's a lot. Gosh, Ireland's expensive as well.
Yeah.
As I said, stop focusing on Israel, everyone. Focus on the incredibly expensive beer everywhere. Get that cheaper.
Yeah, and there are other things than drinking beer. Actually, the wine is great. So what I do when I'm in Israel, I drink more wine than beer, and I'm a happy man.
Israeli wine is fabulous as well. Actually, it's a gem I only discovered when I moved over here. The first time I had it as well, I was very dismissive. I said, "Israeli wine, really?" Delicious though. So yes, come for the wine as well.
Okay, that's a great way to finish. So if there was no other reason, here is the wine.
Exactly.
If the rest was not enough, we just shared another thing, the wine, and I hope that's enough. And I think with the wine, they all become lovers of Israel. It's impossible to be an Israel hater, after having a good glasses of wine.
When you're drunk on wine in Jerusalem, of course, how can you hate Israel then?
Never happened to me. Never happened to me. Never happened to me. So thanks for the chat.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, it was great. So I'm going to put in the description your links, honest reporting, your social media, and hope people can reach out to you, and hope we can do, you can continue to do a great job telling facts and sharing with people what's happening. Yeah.
If you spot anything in the Irish press, do send it over. I want to start doing a bit more on Ireland, actually, because I know how anti-Israel they are. So Irish Times, maybe the Independent, and I don't know.
All of them, to be honest, like 95% of them are crap. That's the reality. There are a few exceptions, but the vast majority.
I'll have to start monitoring them. So
I
will.
Yeah,
I will. Thank you for having me, and have a great night.
Take care. Bye-bye.